All right. Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of Triple Play. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Don't forget to support those that support us. We got Andy McCollum and his team. If you need any of those financial planning needs, 636-458-1798. You also got CS Design at 573-436-3717. They do marketing, they do web design, all that good stuff. And we got Jeff Earhart Agency at State Farm at 314-821-JEFF or 5333. Give those guys a call. And then we got our favorite sponsor, which is our local Bible college, Brookes Bible College. If you're anywhere in the Midwest and you're looking for a good Bible college, you want to get a great degree in either biblical preaching or counseling, check them out. And the cool thing about them is the average pastor has a church of less than 100 in the United States. And if you come out of a college or institute with $100,000 of debt, you're not going to be pastoring that, at least not full time. But if you come out of a college debt-free, you could then go down and pastor a church like that and help grow it. So if you're called to missions and you need that kind of a background, things to consider. And maybe you're a layperson, just want to get deeper and you don't want to spend a lot of money for it. Great place to get deep in God's Word. Great teachers. Can't brag about them enough. So check out Brookes Bible College. We'll have all that information also in the links. That said, today's a really cool episode. Last time we had you here, Justin, we talked forever and ever before and after, and now we're doing it again. We've already had this lively discussion before we even got recording, so that's what's awesome. But we got Justin Sparks, House of Representative guy here in Missouri, extraordinaire, former officer. We learned a lot about your testimony the last time you were here, but we didn't get really into like this whole reason we kind of started out, which was to get you in here talking about your experience as a state representative. And you're like, I got to come back. We got to talk about this because there's so much you just don't even know. So I'm going to kind of let you share a little bit. What was it like being elected and then showing up to Jeff City here in Missouri, and what did you expect and what started becoming reality in your experience?
Yeah, so it's great being back with you, brother. You know, we always just go right into it. And we're all 18 different tangents between the two of us, which is why I love it. But, you know, this part of my life is important. I like to share it. Number one, because when we talk, as you and I have already been talking, and a lot of your viewers probably share our worldview and what, you know, just our eyeballs seeing current events, is that things can look dark and things can look bleak, and things in our country, when you see our moral decay and you see what's happening in our schools and what in the world is going on, why are, you know, girls identifying as boys, and why are we even acting like that's real? You know,
right.
Like it's a real experience. Things are happening, but what is going on? Like, where is truth in all of this? Truth, reality, and why has that all of a sudden become relative? Right? You hear like Oprah, your truth, my truth. Well, there is just one truth, right? There's just one, and we have to get back to that. And so I like to share this part of my story of how I became into the House of Representatives, because without God's sovereign hand and providence, it would not have happened. And I'll explain why. And maybe you're a believer, maybe you're not a believer, but I'll share my own personal experience and testimony in terms of how this happened and why I'm convinced that God is real. He governs our lives. And of course, we have so many experiences we can talk for hours about, but specifically in this one.
Yeah.
In police work, I felt very much called to police work, and we've talked about like the history and the past of how I got here and the family business, you know, my father, brother-in-law, uncle, and even in police work, I knew there was always something in my soul that I was called to do it. I was where I was called to do it, but it wouldn't be where I ended up. And I told my wife, Mandy, you know, I feel like there's something else there. I know I'm enjoying this. I love this. I'm called to this. This is where I'm supposed to be. But also I know that this isn't where I'm going to end up. She's like, really? That's so strange. And I'm like, I know. It's this little like nagging thing at the back of my soul. And so from time to time, different opportunities would come my way. more lucrative opportunities, because honestly, in the public sector, you don't make a ton of money. You can make a good living, but certainly not what you can make in the private sector. So there would be these opportunities that would come up, and I would pray and fast, because that's what I always go back to. You know, if and I encourage anybody listening to this, if you ever have a huge life decision and you can't get clarity and you have to make a decision, pray about it, yes, but deny yourself food and fast and pray. Those two things are so powerful, and I have over and over and over again experienced this in my life, of absolute supernatural breakthrough of decision making when I don't eat and simply pray, seek the Lord, and it never fails. So I would fast and I would pray, and I would receive this peace that this is not the opportunity. It will come one day, but this is not the opportunity that you're going to take. This is not the direction I want you to go in. I want you to be patient, and I want you to keep doing what I've called you to do. And so I would. And I would say, hey, I have a complete peace about this, and move on. And then years would go by, and literally years would go by, and something else would come up, and I would fast and pray, and the Lord would not give me peace about moving in a different direction. And then years would go by. This happened multiple times. I woke up one day, we go into the pandemic, COVID. I wake up this is bizarre. The story doesn't even sound real, but it is absolutely real. I woke up one day out of nowhere, and I felt, as clearly as you and I are talking, I'm going to run for office. Just like that. Now, this is how out of the ordinary and weird this is. I had no desire to run for office at all. People had said, you should run in politics. I was adverse to it, completely opposed to it. I didn't want any part of it, because I had seen, I was just so disenfranchised with the whole idea of the political world, that how in the world could it be redeemable? I mean, I literally thought, what's the point, and just never had any interest in it at all, and had just kind of decided that was not the path that I wanted to go down. And for a lot of the same reasons that when I talk to people about running for office and trying to get other people to run for office, they tell me the same thing. Oh my gosh, I could never do that. I've got this, I've got that. I've got skeletons in my closet. I made bad decisions when I was younger. Here's the truth of that. We all have. Everybody has. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is without blemish or stain. The only difference between me and maybe others would be the fact that I'm completely open and honest about it. Always have been and always will be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like, you can ask me anything about my past and I'll just tell you about it, because I don't claim to be perfect, because none of us are. So I wake up one day with the very obvious, I'm going to run for office. And I thought, oh my gosh, I wish I could tell you I had the faith of a mighty man of God, and that I could say, I'm going to run for office as state representative, the House of Representatives, because I did not. Because I immediately looked up what legislators in the state of Missouri make as a living, and they don't make any money at all. You know what I mean? And I've got, 6 kids. I've got to provide for my wife. And, and we as men, we have a responsibility, right? And that's a very strong drive. And so I was like, well, what in the world? I mean, I looked at the governor's salary. I promise you, this is how naive I am. I was so naive. I looked at the governor's salary and I was like, oh, I guess I'll have to run for governor, because I mean, he's the only one that makes kind of what I make now. That's exactly what I thought. I tell Mandy this, and she's like, what? Can you imagine? Just waking up one day and she's like, what in the world? Where did that come from? So I said to her, if this is God, if this is truly like something that's coming from God, then it will come to fruition, right? It will continue. If it's me, it'll disappear. It won't have any legs, and nothing will happen. And that's something I've learned through my life. If this is a me idea, it'll generally just fizzle. If it's a God idea, if it's God ordained, it will succeed. And so I said, well, we'll just take a step forward, right? Because something my mother-in-law told me a long time ago is, you have to at least be moving in order for God to direct your path, right?
Sure.
Because so many people want to stay immovable. They want to stay static and wait for God to tell them where to go.
Right.
Or tell them which door to go in. They're standing in front of 3 doors. But unless you actually take that initial step, he will guide you to the door. He will open the door for you. But unless you're moving, he can't.
Yeah.
He won't. That's what in my own experience.
Oh, no, I think that's
he's not going to pick you up and do it for you. You have to take a step forward, right?
Like everything in life.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you don't lose weight if you don't at least start to exercise and eat a little bit better.
It applies to everything.
Yeah.
You have to take the first step. It doesn't even have to be a big step, tiny step. So I said, okay, we're going to pray about this decision that I'm making here out of nowhere. We're going to pray about it, and then we're going to take a step forward. And that's what we did. So I prayed about it, and it wouldn't go away. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. This is so weird. What? Okay. And so we were going to take a step forward, honey. And here was our step, because I prayed about it, and this would not go away for months. So I said, okay, we're going to take one step, and we're going to tell my immediate family. It was at a family event, like a birthday party. I said, we're going to tell them that we're going to do this. And she was like, we were laughing about it. We're like, oh my gosh, okay, let's tell them. And that's going to be our step forward. That's going to be our step of faith. And if it's really him, he's going to open the doors that no man can shut, or he's going to shut doors no man can open. Either way, we're good with it. Yeah. And so we told our immediate family that day, hey, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to run. I'm going to run for office. And they're like, what office? I'm like, I don't know. The governor's the only thing that makes close to what I make. But I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we're going to run for office. I don't know. I don't know the details. I literally said, I couldn't tell you guys. I'm sorry. All I know is I'm going to run. I told my immediate family and like 6 people. That's it. One of those people. Yeah, no, I'll get into that. But I literally told 6 people, and that was it. That's it. Nothing happened for 6 months at least. And it was hilarious because I was like, I guess I was completely off. Right? And I'm like, I kept praying, but I'm like, God, I'm trying to move forward kind of clumsily and naively, but I don't know any better. I just know that I think I'm supposed to run for office. So I don't know what to do. I have no idea how to run a campaign. I have no idea about even filing papers. I mean, I would vote in like the big elections, but I was not a political person. I didn't go to political rallies. I didn't go to political meetings of the township and this and that, like so many people do. And by the way, I love those people. I'm grateful for those people that they're involved, but that wasn't me. That wasn't me. That was like, oh, we vote on the presidential elections and the big stuff. I didn't know anything else about it, like, because you're busy doing your life.
Yeah.
By the way, like the vast majority of Americans. Nothing happens. And one day, out of the clear blue, one of those 6 people that I had told I was going to run for office calls me up and says, hey, remember you told me about running? I said, yeah. He said, the representative in your district is withdrawing from his race. He's already won his primary. He's withdrawing from the election to be the chief of staff of a senator, which makes more money. And what would you think about putting your name in the hat? Because what's going to happen is the Republican Central Committee is going to select the candidate for the general election. And so you would have to campaign and run in the general election, but you have no primary. You would be the nominee, the Republican nominee. And I was like, okay. He said, you have to tell me in 24 hours. Right? So I was like, okay, well, let me pray about it. And I tell Mandy, this is what happened. And she was like, what? That's crazy. I said, I know. I don't think I'm going to do it because representatives make like $37,000 a year. And I don't have faith for that. She was like, okay. She was like, oh. And I said, it's technically supposed to be a part-time job, but I've been told it's not a part-time job. It's way more than a full-time job. Which is true, by the way. And so I'd have to find another job. I'd have to supplement my income somehow. I'd have to do all of this. And I'm not a wealthy person. I have a little bit of retirement and a little bit in the savings account. That's it. That's all I have. That's literally what I have. I have 6 kids, so I have nothing. But I have memories.
Me too. I'm the same way. I got 6, so I'm with you on that.
Right, baby. And I would have it no other way, by the way.
Absolutely.
So 24 hours goes by, and I decide it's coming down to the wire now. I got to call him. I got to call and make a decision. And I said, okay, I'm just not going to do it. I don't think this is the opportunity God was showing me. Right. So I tell Mandy I'm over the phone. I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to call him and tell him no. She said, okay. So I get off the phone and I pick up the phone to call, and I can't make the call. I can't make the call. And I'm like, why can't I make this call? This is bizarre. Put the phone down, go do something else, pick the phone back up to make the call. And I can't make the call. I'm like, this is bizarre. So, I mean, this has never happened to me before in my life. I'm a grown man. So I call Mandy and I say, I've tried to pick up the phone to call and say I'm going to pass on this, and I can't make this call. She's like, really? Why not? And I said, well, I started articulating out loud. I said, well, when we started this process, we said that we would take a step. Like, I believe that God told me I was going to run for office, and that we would take a step of faith. We would just take one step and then let him open doors no man can shut and do whatever he was going to do. And perhaps bring an opportunity directly to me that I didn't have to go and find. And as I said those words, I said, exactly like somebody calling me out of clear blue with an opportunity, and that I didn't have to go find. And we were just silent on the phone for a second. And she said, is the only thing that's keeping you from doing this the money? And I said, yes. And she said, well, God is the one that supplies our needs, not the state of Missouri. You don't think that if he calls you and opens these doors, that he won't open other doors and will supplement our income? You think that that's a big deal? Do we really believe God or not? And I was like, I'm doing it. Just like this. And as soon as I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to do it. As soon as I said it, complete and utter peace came over me. I mean, complete and utter peace that you only get a handful of times in your life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do it. Okay, let me call him back. I got off the phone, called him, said I'm going to do it. Great, awesome, whatever, woo. And sure enough, when I say all doors opened, all encumbrances fell, walls fell out of my way supernaturally. And here I stand before you, sit before you as an elected member of the House of Representatives. It has been a whirlwind, but one that I know, if I know anything, that this table and this chair is real and our conversation is real, is that it was God orchestrated. He is still moving, and he is calling his people to do things that are wild, crazy, and require big steps of faith because of the time in which we live and what we're called to do. And hopefully that message translates to anybody that hears this, that his spirit is looking to and fro. Who will go for us? Whom shall I send? Here am I, Lord, send me.
That's so good. And on top of that, I love that your wife was a part of that, because, you know, the fact that we each have 6 kids and that your wife sounds a lot like mine doesn't surprise me, because we both married way over our heads.
For sure.
And there's a reason we have 6 kids, right? Yeah. So, you know, it takes a wise woman to be able to manage that kind of a household. And that is awesome. So you get elected. How was your first day in Jeff City? I know you're laughing, so I love this. So
okay. So now we get into the actual interesting part, I guess.
No, that was interesting, but this is going to be fun. I want to dig into a little bit of what was it like day one to show up in Jeff City? Did you have any preconceived notions of what you thought it was going to be like?
I had no idea.
Okay.
I thought maybe like Mr. Smith goes to Washington, maybe. I honestly had no idea what to expect. My expectations were actually pretty low because as a police officer, generally pretty cynical. And just one of the first things you learn as a police officer is that everybody lies. You know, victims lie, suspects lie, people lie for no reason. Everyone lies. So you just get really used to everybody lying to you. You don't trust, policemen never trust anybody else. They have a hard time trusting because through your career, you don't believe anything anybody says and you just look at the evidence. You learn to only trust what you can verify. I'm not saying that's the best way, by the way, but it is a way.
Well, I don't know if I think we should be able to verify most things, and then, there's a reason why most people have a small group or ring of friends that they can really go to. And then there's the people who are the fringe acquaintances, right?
Sure.
So there's some wisdom in that.
No, I agree. It can be helpful, but it can also be pretty lonely because I have a very small circle. I wish I had a bigger circle. And part of that's just probably my personality. And part of it is just my background, but, and life experiences, which we'll get into, but, yeah. So basically I get down to Jefferson City, don't know what to expect. And this is very early on within the first, couple of weeks of being in Jefferson City. You get down, you get sworn in, there's a ball, an actual ball, which was a blast, by the way, and all your supporters and friends come, and it's great. It's a good time. And then you get down to actually doing the work, and they call you. This, by the way, this happens in D.C. too, because this is the D.C. model. Jefferson City's based on the D.C. model.
I imagine most are.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is how it works. People are always shocked when you hear these stories, but they call you to a lunch it was at the Missouri Farm Bureau. It's a chicken dinner lunch, like a fried chicken lunch. And somebody hands you an envelope, and inside the envelope, there's a dollar amount. Mine was $20,000. And I had no idea you have to remember where I came from. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what politics is. I have no idea what they're doing. Why are you giving me an envelope with money in it? Because I don't have any of these relationships in politics. I don't have any relationships with political people. I'm completely an outsider. I felt God tell me to do this, so I did it, and here I stand.
Yeah.
That's about what it was.
So the envelope had money or had a number that you're supposed to...
It had a number. Yeah, it had a piece of paper on it with a dollar amount.
Okay.
$20,000. I'm like, what is this? What the heck is this? And I was told very quickly, because all the Republicans are in this room. It's only Republicans.
Right.
We're the party of power, right? We're in power. And I'm like, what is this? And they're like, well, that's what you have to give. I said, give to who? Right. And it's a group. It's called the House Republican Campaign Committee. And the Senate has their own version of this, but essentially it's a group that is solely focused on getting Republicans elected, which is not a bad thing. The original structure of this group 20, 30 years ago was a good thing. It's about getting good candidates, good Republicans elected, right? That's how it was formed. That's how it was designed. But it had slowly over time become something different, clearly, because they were simply giving you a dollar amount saying, give this to us. And in exchange, and then I was told by one of their own people, you have to give HRCC money if you want to be in leadership, or if you want to be chairman of a committee. All of these positions, leadership would mean like the floor majority leader, the Speaker of the House, and the Speaker pro tem, the majority whip, right? These are chairmen of committees. All of these people in power in the House of Representatives, they control all the legislation. So extremely powerful positions, right? So even me as a representative, I can file a bill to become law, but unless one of those powerful people allows that bill to be referred to a committee, heard in a committee, passed out of a committee, then to one of several rules committee, then goes to the floor and be scheduled to be heard for a debate, then scheduled for a vote on the floor, and then it has to go to the Senate so they can do the entire process again and then go to the governor's desk to become law. There are so many levels, and unless you play the game, and unless you are a quote-unquote team player, then what are the chances that your legislative priorities are actually going to happen? Probably not very high, right? And that's how they use that club of power to say, you have to do what we tell you to do in order to become part of this system that we've constructed, and perhaps we'll let you be part of it and have some legislation that you want to see become law in the state of Missouri. Here was what the problem was. The problem was me. I was the problem. Because I rejected that out of hand. I felt that there was something completely off about it. Meaning, first of all, you should never tie money to anything when it has to do with decision making or power, right? Even though that is the system that we have, and even though it is often that money is connected to those decision-making processes, it shouldn't be. As a policeman, and I didn't have any background or anything like this, I just was like, these people are giving me money. My constituents are giving me money. Sometimes special interests give you money. They don't even meet with you. They just send you a check. And you're like, where did this even come from? And it's from like a political action committee of like, make Missouri great again. And they gave you money. And you're like, well, who are they? Why are they giving me money? Right? I mean, seriously, this is how it works. And you're like, okay. And you're like, I guess, thank you. I don't even know these people. And so I'm supposed to just blindly give this money that some very hardworking people don't have a lot of money, have given me, and I'm supposed to just give it blindly to HRCC, and they can spend it on whatever they want, on whatever candidate they want, maybe not even a conservative candidate that I agree with.
Right.
And they'll spend it on issues that they want with no transparency or accountability. I don't have any say on that. And right then and there, gave me pause. Like, that was a red flag. And then when I actually voiced those concerns, I was met with unbelievable silence. Or people would, off the record, have conversations with me. Like, most of the representatives would come up to me individually and quietly and say, you are absolutely right. There are obvious problems with this system. We're going to do something about it. We need to do something about it. But they would never say that out loud because they were afraid of being punished. They were afraid of it being held against them. And that's the system that I found myself in on day one. And by the way, in DC, when you get elected to Congress, it's not just a chicken lunch. They actually take you on a retreat for a weekend.
Right.
And they do the exact same thing. They tell you, this is how the amount of money that's going to be required for you to give. This is what you're going to do. And if you give this amount of money, then you can be on this committee. If you give this amount of money, you can be on a better committee. So it's all about fundraising. The problem is there's nothing wrong with fundraising. Campaigns are expensive, right? The other side fundraises like heck.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that. It's tying fundraising, right? When the focus becomes all about money, then you will inevitably start to compromise yourself. Absolutely. It is inevitable. So what you'll do is, in order to keep, I have a perfect example of this, by the way. When Bud Light went off the deep end, Anheuser-Busch goes off the deep end, and they do transgenderism with Bud Light, right?
Right.
And Dylan Mulvaney, and there's a lot of blowback from that. There was a representative who filmed a funny video, essentially taking a baseball bat and smashing a can of Bud Light as like, no, we're not going to do this, right? This is wrong. Well, do you know that representative was contacted and said, take that video down because Anheuser-Busch doesn't like it, and we don't want to cut off that money supply that is flowing into the Republican Party from Anheuser-Busch because of a video about you being upset with Bud Light? Do you know that really happened? Oh. So just think about that now. So you're going to say, like, you're going to compromise what you really do believe in, which is, I'm upset with Anheuser-Busch. I think what they're doing with Bud Light is asinine and stupid, right? And I'm going to say something about it. You're going to ask me not to put that video out on social media because you want your corporate interest dollars to keep flowing, because your focus has become all about money instead of doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do regardless. Do you see? And that's what has become in our nation, in DC, and that has what has become in our state. But the good news is it's all changing. It's all changing.
Hey, we see that right now going on with the Republican Party. Speaking of Speaker of the Houses, did you see today's news, a little clip?
What? With Mike Johnson?
No, with
what?
Kevin McCarthy.
Oh, yeah, saying goodbye.
He's retiring.
Oh, well, I can't say that that's not a good thing, because it's a great thing.
Yeah. and McConnell, it's interesting. I keep waiting for his because, he's another one, McConnell and McCarthy, who've held those purses for so long and put money. Because that's the thing. Usually what I find is the people who are in power then decide where the money's going to go. And, they don't, if history has been repeating itself, which is they don't put it in the right areas to the people who really need it and for the best interest of the party.
So to see how this incestuous garbage system, what we have here, and how we can blow it up, because we can reform it. We can make it better. And we are in the process of doing that in Missouri right now, miraculously too. And I can't take credit for it. I wish I could. I can't. I'm just part of it. Because there's a lot of people, way more people than I even thought, think exactly the same way I do. And it took all of us kind of individually saying, I'm not going to do this. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to give you money. I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to give you that $20,000.
Yeah.
Right. And until I have assurances that this system can be transparent, accountable, and that that this money is going to causes and candidates that I agree with that are actually doing the right thing. Right.
Absolutely.
And so when you get like just a handful of people just openly saying like, well, okay, punish me then. What are you going to do to me? What? I mean, what? Oh, you're not going to put me on a committee that I want to go on, or you're not going to make me a chairman. You're not going to put me in leadership. I could care less, right? Because ultimately, that's not why I'm here. That's not why God called me to do it. If God wants me to be in leadership, I'll be in leadership. He wants me to scrub floors in the basement of the Capitol. I'll scrub floors in the basement of the Capitol. See, because that's the spirit he's looking for. I'm convinced of that. I'll do anything he wants me to do. I'm not going to be beholden to any man or any dollar amount for any quid pro quo power because I want to be involved. There's nothing wrong with ambition. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be involved and guide legislation and good policy for the state of Missouri. As long as you're doing it out of the genuine desire to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and not because you're like, I have to give this money in order to play this game, in order to this and that. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because no matter what you say, I don't care how strong you think you are and how much integrity you think you have, if you go down that road of giving money, raising money, and connecting money to power and decision making, you will compromise.
That's right.
You will compromise because you can't say that somebody giving you money in exchange for something won't affect you, because that's what they always tell you. They say, oh, wow, I'm supporting you, but this doesn't mean like you have to, that you have to do anything for this. I'm just giving it to you. And you're like, so you're saying that you're giving me this money, but that shouldn't affect my decision-making process. When something comes up, I have to say yes or no on an issue. And this person over here gave me thousands of dollars, this person didn't. And you're expecting that's not going to affect people, because it does affect people.
Absolutely.
And people are, oh, no. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. That money absolutely speaks volumes, and it does change people. It does affect their decision making if they allow it to. And so what we're trying to do, me and others, is shake that whole system and reform it to make it effective again, transparent again, accountable again, and what it was originally designed to. And awesome. And what you're seeing is in DC, they're doing the exact same thing. Kevin McCarthy had $100 million in his purse. That $100 million. And he would spend that money on candidates that would support him.
Absolutely.
Or candidates that would vote for corporate interests that were favorable to things that he liked. So he would use his purse, which was very powerful, to help them raise money in their congressional districts around the country and get them reelected. And that's how it would work. But thank God, what we're seeing is after 2020, and the presidential campaign, President Trump's first administration, and then the election, everything has changed. Nothing is the same. And what I mean by that is the conventional rules of politics no longer apply. And a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people still haven't woken up to that. You can't trust what has worked 10 years ago, 20 years ago, because that's the old way. It's all about dollars. Money, money, money. Spend money in races, then you'll win. At one time that worked. One time that was the model. It's not the model anymore. It's all about, in my opinion, policy. People in Missouri want to see what their representatives are doing. And what the question I get asked is, you have a supermajority in the House and the Senate, but yet we're not passing conservative legislation like Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas. Why not? Yeah. And the answer is very simple. The people that call themselves Republicans that are running the show in Jefferson City in both the House and the Senate aren't really your conservative Republicans, and they have no interest in really passing any conservative legislation. And now, this is not throw the baby out with the bathwater. They're not all bad. They don't all do these things. But, we talk about different issues like initiative petition and changing the Constitution in the state of Missouri. The reason that hasn't been changed or passed is because very powerful special interests do not want that to happen. So it doesn't happen. So this is the system that that literally one term in office, one term, one session is all I've spent there. And it's unbelievably obvious what the issues we're facing are. The good thing is I'm not alone. Number one, the Lord is with me. He's called me to do this. That's the number one thing. And number two, there's a lot of people like me. And we have all decided, not because we had any secret meetings or talked behind the scenes. We didn't. I wish we could say that. I wish I could say we were organized and powerful and well-funded. None of that's true. We all made these decisions independent of one another and simply started making decisions and voting the way we voted because that's how we felt and believed. And that right there is more powerful than any special interest with any dollar amount.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So did you make it to any committees?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh, yeah.
What committees are you on?
Public safety, judiciary, elections, and I'm on a subcommittee for the budget committee.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've got my plate full.
In this upcoming legislative session coming up, what are your priorities?
Okay, that's a great question. And I filed a bunch of bills, 10 bills at least, but the two main priorities that I have is Valentine's Law. Detective Valentine was killed in the line of duty. He was a detective that worked for the same police department that I did. I was on scene the day that he was killed by a fleeing felon. Detective Valentine and his team attempted to stop a vehicle with a bad guy in it. Long and short of it is the guy fled at a high rate of speed and drove as fast as his vehicle would go while the tires were being deflated by a tire deflationary device and rammed his vehicle into Detective Valentine's vehicle head on. And the vehicles hit so hard that the engine actually exploded out of the suspect's vehicle and launched itself 50 yards down the road. I'll never forget this. Detective Valentine was ripped from his vehicle. The bad guy was ripped from his vehicle. The bad guy died on scene. Detective Valentine died from a ruptured aorta at the hospital later. And just a horrific, his daughter, his sons, his family, I've been through this process with my own brother-in-law. And to have to relive it again it's terrible for the family. It's terrible for the police department. It's terrible for everybody involved. But I will say that he did not die in vain. It's what comforts me is the fact that his service was commendable, worth remembering, and Valentine's Law will make it a felony. It will define the offense of aggravated fleeing. When a bad guy flees from police and puts the public at risk for serious physical injury or death, they will be required to go to prison. So what's important about that is required jail time is something that doesn't exist right now. What these guys essentially do is they plead their charges down to something nonviolent or certainly less, so they don't hand them to get suspended impositions of sentence and probation, right? And so no real consequences come from running from the police. And bad guys run from the police every day now. Every day, every hour. In St. Louis and St. Louis County, bad guys are running from the police. And it's just like the scripture that's on the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C. The wicked flee when none pursueth, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. The bad guys run even if the police are not behind them. They're driving 120 miles an hour the wrong way against traffic at 3 p.m. when school's letting out in Jennings Station Road. That's what we see. We used to actually see them from the air unit. We would see them on cameras. We would see them running and driving this way, whether the police were trying to stop them or not, because they flee no matter what. Right. Cowards by nature. And so what this offense will do is if you run from the police, you're going to jail. We call it sitting down. You're sitting down. We're going to take your freedom away because we're actually going to redefine that relationship between the public, the police, and the criminal element. And the public has turned the sentiment, their sentiment about this issue has turned, and they're supporting what the police are doing. And they support this issue and they support this, what we're trying to do, because they see my kids are going to die. My kids are going to get ran over. Police officers, yes, are going to get hurt. First responders are going to get hurt. Of course they are. But like I drive on Jennings Station Road with my children and the buses, and it's out of control. It is out of control, and something has to be done about it. So that's going to be Valentine's Law. I'm pretty excited about it, and that's one of my main priorities. The other one is HJR 89. It's a change to our Constitution that would redefine who a person is. A person would be defined as a unique genetic code, verifiable human life, and that verifiable human life would be eligible for equal protection under the law regardless of age. So we can get into that a little bit if you want to know what that actually does.
Well, I see a lot of things that it does because it kind of provides protection for abortion. So it's a pro-life one. And then it also, if I'm reading that right, that kind of takes away the transgender stuff a little bit too. It's kind of an all-encompassing bill. As I'm thinking it out, why you said that, the way you just said that, on a couple of am I missing something else? I see those two are the key things. So I see.
You're exactly right, because during last session where I filed the transgender surgery and therapy law, which basically said that children now who cannot consent to medical procedures and practices on themselves would no longer be eligible to have their genitals cut off or gender reassignment surgery under the age of 18. And they would no longer be able to take puberty blocking hormones or cross-sex hormones that chemically sterilize and castrate themselves. And of course, the reason for that is children cannot comprehend a decision that will permanently alter their body when they're too young, right? So
we don't let them get a tattoo unless they're over 18, right?
Got it, exactly. Because we believe in our society that you should be of a certain age before you make a decision that permanently alters yourself. And when I was dealing with that issue specifically, I thought to myself, why are people saying, because of the way I feel or identify, that I'm going to ingest a product into my body that's made to, that we use in our society to sterilize sex offenders, or put a chemical, a therapy into my body that is actually made for Lupron, which is a puberty blocking hormone, which is actually used for prostate cancer therapy, right? Not FDA approved for gender assignment, transgender therapy.
I'm sure they'll FDA approve it soon with this administration, right? That means very little anymore.
No.
The WHO's little agreement has been rejected by something like 20 nations now.
You're right.
So their credibility in the medical field is pretty much obsolete right now.
Yeah, you're right. And so I thought to myself, well, what makes a person a person? Because 100 years from now, a transgender person that says that a girl that says I'm a boy, they're going to dig that person up and they're going to see the girl that said they were a boy is a girl. Because one thing and one thing only, it's in your DNA. Every cell of your body has DNA that says what you are. And that's what makes up who you are biologically. Now, we know that we as human beings, this is a shell, a temple in which our soul resides, right? Our spirit. But biologically, your DNA is who you are. And your DNA says that you're a man. Or your DNA says that you're a woman. And it doesn't matter what you do to the outside. It doesn't matter what you cut off or add. It doesn't matter what chemicals you take. It will never change what your DNA says that you are. And that's why when people dig me up 100 years from now, if we're still around, we probably won't be, but if we're still around, and they're digging people up, they're going to see that I was a man, right? And so isn't that really the issue? A DNA code, a DNA. Because inside a woman's body, when that life begins, when those two cells combine and there's an actual verifiable spark, which we can actually record, I've seen it with my own eyes, of when those two cells connect and start growing, there's a flash, an electrical charge that occurs at the moment of growth, right? Conception. Life begins. at that moment, a brand new set of DNA, unique to that person, is constructed. And that is the DNA that person will have for the rest of their life, from that moment to their death. And I believe that that is worth protecting. I believe that that deserves equal protection under the law, regardless of age, regardless of what kind of assistance that person needs, right? Because whether you're in the womb, out of the womb, special needs, handicap, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter how much assistance you need, what kind of environment is required for your growth. All that matters is that you're growing, your life is verified, and your life is unique. Your life is verified, your life is unique, and that is worth protecting. Absolutely. And that's what HJR 89 does.
Awesome. I like it. I like it a lot. Those are two good priorities. I was curious what your priorities were. I like them.
Good. So, I'm glad you like them. Well, yeah. The idea is because what you're seeing around the country with abortion is in states like Ohio or other states. In Missouri right now, abortion is illegal. You know that, right? Because when Roe versus Wade was overturned, we had a law that was basically in place that became automatic and that outlawed abortion. Now, there are Republicans, and they mean well, that think that they're going to file bills like a heartbeat abortion bill. When we had abortion in Missouri, a heartbeat abortion bill was a great idea because it restricted abortion up to a heartbeat. Essentially, once you detected a heartbeat, then abortion was illegal, right?
Right.
Well, all abortion is illegal in Missouri. So if a Republican files a heartbeat abortion bill, what's that going to do?
Goes backwards.
It's going to legalize abortion in Missouri up until the beating of the heart. So abortions that would not occur, people that would not be destroyed, are going to be destroyed if we as Republicans file and vote for a bill like a heartbeat abortion bill. See, it works in the exact opposite way that it worked before, right? Because abortion is... You're now legalizing it instead of restricting it. And that's what I'm trying to get across to my colleagues is, guys, we do not want to be Republicans that legalize abortion in Missouri because we're afraid of an initiative petition process from leftists that are trying to legalize abortion up until the time of birth. That's really what it is. It's passing legislation. Yeah,
it's a response to say, well, we'll give you a little bit to satisfy you, but they're never satisfied.
You're exactly right. Now you
can't ever satisfy. Once you give them a little tasting, then they're going to want more.
They're going to use it as a win, and they're going to use that to gain momentum, funding, and signatures for their petition. That's exactly right. You never do something.
Well, then they pose the question is if there's not a life up to heartbeat, who are you to decide that a heartbeat's life?
Exactly. So I think that it's exactly the wrong. It's well-meaning, and I understand why some are considering it, but it's exactly the wrong thing to do. Is to go backwards and play defense. Instead, we should really define the issue, shouldn't we? DNA, verifiable life, verifiable unique DNA. That's worth protecting because that's no longer a woman's body. That's a unique person inside a woman's body. And we need to start having that conversation.
Well, I think what's interesting is the way you put it with the way you're saying that. It reminds me very much to our Constitution of inalienable rights. You're putting something out there that's vague, but not necessarily vague. Like you're not giving a name. You're saying, hey, if you've got DNA, and inalienable rights are anybody who's alive, you have rights. And so it just reminds me of that same kind of a tone versus trying to, I think sometimes we get caught up in trying to plug holes that, we forget that we don't need instead of plugging holes, let's just build a wall.
Yeah. You're exactly right. And, we've had this debate in St. Louis before, haven't we? Because you remember Dred Scott. Is a black person a real person? Or is he 3/5 of a person? Yeah. Our Supreme Court back then, many of whom owned slaves, I believe that decision contributed to the rise of the Civil War, unfortunately, in the fact that we would define a black person as not being a whole person, in which, of course, we know now, right? Of course they are.
Absolutely.
But think of this, like our Supreme Court or an actual federal court at the time would say that Dred Scott wasn't completely a person. That's what we're doing right now, isn't it? In utero, to human beings. We're saying, well, you're not a person until what? I can detect your heartbeat? Now you're a person? Oh, what's the standard? Oh, yeah. Are you a person after you're born? Because now there's many people on the left that say, well, even an infant isn't really a person because they're really not conscious of what they're doing. They really don't know, even though they can experience pain and they're breathing. What's the difference between before they come out of the womb and outside the womb? What they're breathing, yes, but mentally, their faculties are basically the same from 1 week to the next week. Think about this now, because this is the slippery slope you're going down. When is a person a person? Because the truth is, when life begins and that DNA is unique, that's when you're a person, because that's who you really are. Interesting, right?
I love it. It's interesting, and I love it.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's what we're working on.
That's awesome. And in your other bill, I want to expound, because that was one of my other questions I had for you today, because there were kind of two parts in the last interview we didn't get to. And I gave you forewarning that I want to talk to you a little bit about your brother-in-law, because that's quite an experience. And, we could probably do a full podcast off of it, but obviously it influences this bill in particular. Share a little bit about that. People who may not know, honestly did not realize that he was your brother-in-law until I did a little research before our first podcast. That's when I discovered that. I was like, whoa.
So who we're talking about is Blake Snyder.
That's right.
Is my brother-in-law. He married my sister Elizabeth, and I love talking about him. Number one, because he's worth talking about, and he's worth remembering. He made the ultimate sacrifice, and he did so willingly, which is a uniquely honorable thing in our culture and throughout the annals of time, is when, Jesus said, greater love has no one than he who lays down his life for his friend, right? And Jesus was articulating something very specific, which is your greatest gift, the greatest thing that you will ever have, is the life that God gave you. He gave you life. He gives us air to breathe, and he keeps our heart beating. It is not by our own power that you and I sit here today. It is because it is according to his will he allows us to engage. And our destiny is entwined to that, both when we're born, all of our experiences, and the very day and moment of our death and departure. And when you start thinking about that, it's heavy, right? Because how are you going to spend your time? How are each of us going to spend the time that we're given? And when somebody uses that time to sacrifice and to serve others, it's worth remembering, particularly when they voluntarily give that up in order to save the life of another person. And so when we talk about being a legislator or past experiences with the police world or anything that we're working on, priorities and the life issue, this is what our experiences in our life, they form us. And some of them will forever alter you. We've talked about some of those things that you've experienced and I've experienced, and this is one of those things. That's why I'm so passionate about the life issue. That's why I'm so passionate about things that actually matter, because so much in our world today doesn't matter, but this actually does. And so Blake Snyder, worth remembering. I love him, and I can't wait to see him again one day. I have a lot to say to him. And he marries my sister Elizabeth. Now, he's a graphic designer by trade. Okay?
Really? I did not know that.
Yes.
Okay.
Very talented, by the way. Very talented digital art. And he's working at a church that we were attending. And he falls in love with my sister, Elizabeth. And I love Blake from the very beginning. He was sweet and quiet and just so crazy about Elizabeth, which was most important to me. And that he loved the Lord. He had a relationship with Jesus, with God. He knew who he served. He knew his eternal salvation and where he would end up for eternity. All of which checked all the boxes, And the thing about it was he saw my father, who was a former policeman, and I was a current policeman, and our uncle, Elizabeth's uncle, is a policeman. And he became enamored with the life of sacrifice because he saw something bigger. He saw there was something more to life. He became convinced that he was destined to be part of something greater than himself. And when that seed starts to grow, it's almost impossible to put out. And I even tried. I legitimately tried, because, he was in the police academy, and coming from his background, it was not the typical law enforcement background or the military background. It was graphic design. So he was completely different. He was so sweet and loving. And, gosh, man, he was in the police academy, and we had to watch these. You have to watch these videos where, essentially they take a live pig and they slice the arteries, an arterial bleed of a pig, and it's extremely graphic. The blood squirts everywhere, and the whole idea is that you overcome that natural physical reaction, human reaction, and then are able to very clearly see how you can close off the artery, use a tourniquet, and stop the bleeding, and so the pig won't die. Right? This is a pig that's going to be slaughtered anyway, but they're doing this for training purposes. It's a graphic video, right? I mean, just brutal, because if you don't know this, pigs look just like human beings. I mean, inside, okay? We're all just basic biological animals in the inside of us, and it's gross. And so I remember Blake kind of like started to pass out, and I'm not even outing him. Like I'll have to apologize, I guess, one day, but I'm not outing him because I tell you this story. One of his instructors was like, they got a hold of me and they're like, this is what happened in class. And I was like, yeah, that video is bad. And if you're kind of watching it on a light stomach, you kind of have to be prepared for that. And if you come from a background where that's not like, you're not a hunter, so you've never field dressed a deer, that can be a little bit gross when you see that for the first time, right? It's very like, a little overwhelming. And so I think, he got lightheaded, and they were like, this is a concern. He's going to see this in the real world. And it's true. And it's not going to be a pig. It's going to be human. Right. You're going to see the inside of people, and it's gross, it's horrible. And people kill themselves, and children, and sometimes children die. And these things are all traumatic. And without a good fundamental foundation in Christ, that's why a lot of policemen suffer mental illness. That's why a lot of policemen suffer with PTSD, and they sometimes take their own life, and their marriages suffer, because you have to know how to deal with trauma, and you have to know how to deal with it, heal from it, and who you are, right? And so many people don't, policemen included. So that's always their concern when they see something like that, what happened to Blake. So, I called Blake and I said, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe this isn't, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with that at all, because we all have a unique calling on our life, and it's important for you to find yours and what you're supposed to do. And basically, I was really trying to give it hard to him so that he wouldn't try to go into this job because for the glory or the prestige or the honor that is associated with a life of sacrifice for the wrong reasons. Something my father did to me when he knew that I wanted to be a police officer. And it only strengthened his resolve.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which is awesome because he was called to do it. He heard the call from the Lord. He heard the call, and nothing was going to dissuade him from this, which speaks to his character, of course, and his obedience, because he believed he was obeying the call of God on his life. And that's important because of eventually what happened. Now, fast forward, he becomes a police officer in the 3rd precinct, Afton Southwest, which is great. And great people, he enjoys the people, the precinct that he's serving in. And he immediately rises to become a very effective police officer. He's working the midnight shift because he's newer. He serves in Ferguson and the Ferguson riots. And he does so honorably, and countless stories of how he impacted lives, children, domestic violence. Like, he was exactly the policeman you wanted showing up. Passionate, caring, empathetic, and not prideful, arrogant, or, calloused and cynical, burned out. The exact opposite. And so he immediately becomes the officer that is always the one that's going to every single call. You know, he's so excited, and just all he wants to do at family events is talk about all the calls that he's gone on and the things that he's done. And he's so passionate. And when I would talk to him, I could see myself in him. He was so excited to do the job. It wasn't even a job. He would have done it for free, right? Because when you're called to do something like that and you enjoy it so much, it's no longer a job, you know? And he and Elizabeth they're newlyweds, and they have a little baby, Malachi, now. And they live over in Edwardsville, Illinois. And he's making this commute over to the Afton Southwest Precinct. And Elizabeth really wants him to take a job, do something else, you know, take a job over in Edwardsville so he doesn't have to drive and he doesn't have to work midnights and Christmases and holidays, right? It is a life of sacrifice. It is. And he prayed about it, and he told her that, you know, and this is Blake's personality. He would give Elizabeth anything. You know, he was always way too lenient on her, in my opinion, and would just spoil her to death. But that was his nature. But on this fundamental issue, he said, I don't believe the Lord's calling us to do that. I believe I'm where I'm supposed to be. It's very interesting that he believed that. Like he wasn't like he was just going about his daily thing and something bad happened. No, he specifically believed he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Interesting. And so she said, okay, wow. I mean, this was unlike Blake to be so adamant, right? And to know that I am where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
No matter what.
Right.
And even up until the week before the event, he's driving home from a midnight watch. It's very late, you know. He doesn't even feel tired, but he doesn't realize that he falls asleep at the wheel. Car goes off the embankment, flips over, could have easily been killed. He's not injured. He walks away.
Wow.
So he has this massive accident. Nobody else is injured. It's literally one car accident, but he falls asleep. The car goes off the side of the road, flips over, could have easily been killed. It was that bad. And he walks away completely unscathed.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Absolutely.
Because the very next week, he's killed in line of duty. He's ambushed and killed. The call that comes out that night is for a disturbance. The suspect is a young man who is a drug addict on lots of antidepressant, mind-altering drugs. From the trial, we now know these drugs that he was abusing, of Xanax and things like that. And he had told his dad earlier that day that he was going to essentially kill a policeman. He had said it on social media, and he showed his father that he had a firearm. And it bothered his father enough that his father contacted the police and said, he said this, but his father left out one very important part. His father did not say that he had bought a gun, that he was in possession of a firearm. And personally, I think his father will have to live with that decision for the rest of his life. And I think it was the wrong decision, obviously. And we could talk and speculate why he would or he would not tell the police, not only has my son said this, what he's intending to do, but he also has a firearm to carry it out. Would have been helpful information, wouldn't it have? But he didn't. He left that out. So when this disturbance comes out, Blake had already dealt with this young man before. He knew he was troubled, and the other officers in the precinct had known and dealt with this guy before as well. And so they had a previous relationship with him. They knew his history and his issues. He had gone to his ex-girlfriend's house. He had tried to kick the door in. They were afraid for their life, the girl and her mom, but he wasn't able to break the door down. So he returned to his vehicle where he was sitting when Blake arrived. But this was not Blake's call. Remember the type of officer Blake was. Blake was that guy that jumped the call, is what we used to call it. Jumping the call means the call comes out. It's not your call. You don't have to go, but you're going to go because you want to do some good. And he arrived before the officer that actually was dispatched got there. And so Blake arrived contacted the suspect, and the suspect was waiting for him and got off one shot, and the shot was lethal. And then the responding officer, whose call it was, gets into a shootout with the suspect, and the suspect is injured, doesn't ultimately die. That started a process that is still to this day surreal to me and to our family, who I can only say, thank God we knew the Lord, to have his presence, because I was also working that morning, 4:00 in the morning, because I had to get up really early. I was on the SWAT team, and we were about to execute a warrant up in the Ferguson area, and we were at staging location, and we're getting ready. We're getting prepared, putting our kits on, and somebody said, there's been a shooting in the 3rd precinct, or 3rd or 4th precinct. They didn't know which one. And they said, yeah, there's an officer got injured. And I said, what are you talking about? Because I know where Blake is. And I said, what do you mean? What happened? They said, I don't know. There's no details. They just know there's a shooting and officer's injured. And it's okay, though, because they're taking him to St. Anthony's. And back then, St. Anthony's wasn't a trauma center, so it would have been a relatively minor, was what we assumed, that it would have been a minor injury if they're taking him to St. Anthony's, because they're not taking him to Mercy or Barnes, which is where you typically would go to a trauma one. And so something in me just froze, and I stopped. And I immediately sent a text to Blake, and I said, are you okay? And I didn't get a response back. And something in me just knew. Something in me just knew that it was him. And so I jumped in my police car, turned the lights and sirens on, and started driving down to St. Anthony's. And as I drove, I'm trying to get on the phone with communications to get the latest information. They won't give me anything. But it was confirmed that Blake was injured. And so I'm like, what in the world happened? Like, what's going on? And when I finally got to the ER at St. Anthony's, I was met there by an officer a supervisor I had worked with for years. And I could see it in his face when he looked at me. He was dreading this moment. And then I knew. And I said, where is he? Where did he get hit? And he told me his face. And I thought, no, why is he at St. Anthony's? What in the world? And little did I know that, that staff at St. Anthony's was, fighting so valiantly to save his life. But the injury was so catastrophic. And what it had hit, the bullet had actually ricocheted and had hit the artery. There's an arterial bleed, which is extremely hard to stop. You would have had to be on scene and basically dug inside to stop that arterial bleed. Almost impossible. And at that point, it just started a process of having to, realize, what can I do at this point? And just a sound comes out of you, from a place that you didn't even know you had, of why wasn't I there? Why couldn't I stop it? This is not supposed to happen. I'm supposed to be the person that makes sure this never happens to him. I'm the person that signed his application to get hired as a police officer. I'm responsible for this. All these emotions and decisions are flooding over you, And now I have to go pick up Elizabeth over in Edwardsville and try to get her here as quickly as possible. So that's what I did. And got into a police car with another police officer, and we drove as fast as we could over to Edwardsville, and I'm calling Elizabeth, and I'm telling her what had happened, and she's freaking out, and I know. Even though they haven't told me yet, I know. And as we're getting closer, they're calling me. How close are you? How close are you? How close are you? And I look back at Elizabeth, and I told her, even in the car, because nobody wanted to say it. Nobody wanted to say it. And I just had to tell her, he's gone. And here it is. Elizabeth's a believer. I'm a believer. Blake's a believer. We know the Lord. We know the Lord can heal. We know God is a God of miracles. And yet, all I can tell you is in situations like that, it's like you very clearly know the heart of the Lord, and he is there. It doesn't make the pain go away, but I never felt alone. I knew that he was there, and I knew that he wasn't going to change the outcome, even though I wanted him to. But I knew the answer was no. So that's really hard, because now I know I'm going to have to go through pain, and I'm going to have to go through my own pain. But the worst is I'm going to have to go through her pain, and I'm going to have to be there with her, Elizabeth and Malachi, to walk through this journey with them. But God also knew that I was going to be put in that situation, called for that purpose in that time, just like I am right now, and just like you are, doing exactly what we're supposed to do. Part of our destiny. And so anyway, yeah, when we talk about these different things, that's one of those formative experiences in my life, and it still is like right here next to me, and it always will be.
I understand that 100%. There, I call them life-altering events that happen, marriage, first kid. Not that the other kids aren't important, but that first one is life-altering, in a way that you've never known. So there's certain things in your life, certain cornerstones that God allows. Pain, first death that you experience, first death that you see. So I can understand that very, very much. So from there, just a quick question. How's your sister and Malachi doing?
So yet another testament, like I said, like you got the bad part, right? The tragic part, and it is tragic, because the pain and the loss never goes away. And just ask the family members, ask Blake's mom and dad. It's always with you.
Right.
But just like when I was talking about the bad part of the legislature, politics is dirty, whatever, is that there is light. That God is sovereign. He sits on his throne. He has a plan. So, and that's what we've been able to see with Elizabeth, because God sent her an amazing man, Jacob, who is just like Blake, unbelievably so, and it tailor-made for Elizabeth and Malachi, who is not a prideful, insecure man. Instead, he knew, I'm going to join this family with Elizabeth and Malachi and Blake. And Blake will never not be part of our family. Blake is as much a part of their family today as he ever could be by physically not being here. It's remarkable. And I give Jacob all the credit. I give God all the credit for bringing Jacob into our life. So Elizabeth has married Jacob, and they've had 2 more children since then. And, nothing is perfect. We're not perfect, and life is not perfect, but it's as close to perfect as you possibly can get from this situation. And so to others that I say maybe who are going through trauma or who have experienced trauma, particularly trauma like this, violent trauma, there is hope. Let me just speak to you. Jesus is real. God is real. Call upon him, and he will not let you down. He will be there with you. He will heal your heart. You who are hearing me right now, that you don't think that you could ever have a normal day again, much less normal week, month, year, or life. He is there for you. He wants to heal you. He will restore you to something greater than you didn't even think was possible. I'm living testimony to it.
I think we can end there. I think ending on a hopeful period is good. I love it.
Got it.
Yeah, I like it. And that said, for those who've been listening, don't forget to support Justin. We need this guy to stay in office.
Yeah.
That does create money, and you can't fight the machine unless you have people having your back. So have his back. We'll have the links in the show notes, and I'm sure I'll put something across the screen like we did the last episode, so you guys can hop on, throw your support his way if God has led you to do so. Also pray. Prayer is important because everybody's tempted.
Amen.
And everybody needs wisdom, right? I mean, you look at Solomon. We want leaders that have wisdom. So pray for Justin. Pray for the upcoming legislation term that'll be happening here in Missouri. And if you're not in Missouri, in your state, I'm sure it's coming up as well. So, and in our country.
Amen.
We were talking about D.C. and we need God to move in mighty ways We were talking even before we went on air that we need a great revival in this country.
Yes,
we need a great spiritual awakening. It's happened before in this country. It can happen again. And we need to see a renewal of hearts turned towards the Lord and knees bowed. And that's where real effective change in anywhere will come, when people are humble before the Lord.
Amen.
That said, we appreciate you. And if you're looking for a Christmas gift, don't forget we got cool hats and shirts and all that good stuff. And we will catch you guys next episode. Thanks again. Thanks, Justin.
God bless.